Your mind is not calm because you keep giving power to things you cannot control. Today, stop doing that and look directly at your judgments, your desires, and your choices. That is where peace begins and where real success and real wealth take shape. Stay with me and subscribe if you want plain Stoic guidance that helps you live with reason, virtue, and steadiness each day. Most people chase results while leaving their inner life untrained and then wonder why they feel restless, tired, and divided. This video will bring you back to what is yours alone, your judgment, your conduct, and your response to every hour. You will see how to quiet the mind without weakness, how to seek prosperity without slavery, and how to live with enough clarity to meet the day without fear. Number 1. Master what is yours and release everything else. Stop chasing what you cannot command. Stop handing your mind over to money that has not arrived yet, the praise that may never come, the reply from a person who may never change, and the future that will never obey your fear. Your peace has been broken by a lie you keep repeating to yourself, that life must first arrange itself before you can be calm. It is the opposite. Calmness comes first. Clear judgment comes first. Self-command comes first. Then you act, then you build, then you receive what is fitting. Not because the world owes you anything, but because a disciplined mind no longer leaks its strength into things outside its rule. Look at your life honestly. How many hours have you given to thoughts that could not help you? How much energy have you spent imagining insults that have not been spoken yet, failures that have not happened yet, and losses that may never come? You have called this thinking, but much of it is only surrender. A mind that runs everywhere is not free. A mind that clings to every possible outcome is not powerful. A mind that begs the world to behave is a mind that has already lost its dignity. Freedom begins the moment you say with full honesty, "This is mine to govern, and that is not." What is yours? Your judgment is yours. Your choice is yours. Your intention is yours. Your effort is yours. Your willingness to act with honesty is yours. Your willingness to tell the truth to yourself is yours. Your willingness to remain just when it would be easier to lie is yours. Everything else is not yours in the deepest sense. The weather is not yours. The opinions of others are not yours. The timing of events is not yours. The body will age. The market will rise and fall. A door may open or remain closed. A message may come or remain silent. A person may stay or leave. A job may be offered or refused. None of this belongs to your command. You may influence it. You may prepare for it. You may meet it well, but you do not own it. This is not weakness. This is the beginning of strength. The man who demands control over the uncontrollable becomes anxious, bitter, and scattered. The man who accepts the limits of his power becomes sharp, calm, and effective. He stops wasting his breath on complaint. He stops turning every delay into a personal insult. He stops worshipping outcomes. He begins to worship virtue. He asks a better question each day, not "Will life give me what I want?" but "Will the first conduct myself well, no matter what life gives me?" That question changes everything. You want success and wealth, then first learn not to be ruled by them. A person who is desperate for money will do foolish things for money. A person who is desperate for recognition will sell his character for applause. A person who is desperate for comfort will become weak the first time hardship appears. Wealth without self-rule is only another form of slavery. It can buy softer surroundings but not a stronger soul. Success without discipline is only decoration. It may raise your status while leaving your mind in chains. You must train yourself to seek what is good, not merely what is profitable. What is good is what makes you just, steady, brave, and wise. If wealth comes through such a mind, it can be used well. If it does not come, the mind still remains whole. So begin here. Each morning before you touch the world, sit in silence and divide reality into two parts. Place in one part the things that are up to you. Place in the other part everything else. Do not do this quickly. Do it until your mind feels the weight of it. Say plainly, my opinions are up to me. My actions are up to me. My restraint is up to me. My willingness to endure is up to me. Then say, the behavior of other people is not up to me. The result of my work is not fully up to me. The praise of others is not up to me. The exact shape of the day is not up to me. This is not a ritual for comfort. It is a drill for freedom. A mind trained in this way does not panic when life refuses to cooperate. It already knows where its authority ends. Then choose one duty for the day and carry it without complaint. Not 10 duties. 1. The point is not to overwhelm yourself with ambition. The point is to govern yourself in what is present. Make your bed with attention. Do your work without seeking applause. Speak truthfully in one conversation that you would normally avoid. Finish the task you have delayed. Send the message you know is necessary. Study before you scroll. Save before you spend. Refuse one impulse that weakens you. This is how a mind becomes reliable, not through grand promises but through repeated obedience to reason. The soul becomes large by being faithful in small things. You must also learn to inspect your thoughts before they become actions. A thought enters the mind and immediately pretends to be truth. It says, they disrespected you. It says, you are behind. It says, you need this now. It says, if this does not happen, then you are finished. Do not rush to obey such claims. Pause, question them. Ask what proof they have. Ask whether they concern what is yours or what is not. Ask whether they make you more just or more frantic. Ask whether they belong to reason or to fear. This pause is everything. Between impression and response there is room for freedom. In that room, a human being becomes master of himself. When hardship arrives, do not insult it and do not dramatize it. Say only this. Here is material for virtue. A difficult person gives you the chance to practice patience. An unfair moment gives you the chance to practice justice. A failure gives you the chance to practice endurance. A delay gives you the chance to practice restraint. A loss gives you the chance to practice release. Nothing in life is wasted if you know how to use it. The obstacle is not an enemy unless you make it one. Many of the things you call misfortune are only your training ground. They strip away illusion. They show you where your character is still soft. They teach you to stand where you used to collapse. Do not say that the world is against you. That is the language of a mind that has not accepted nature. The world is not arranged to flatter your preferences. It is arranged according to laws you did not write. Your part is not to complain about the design, but to live excellently inside it. Accepting what cannot be changed does not mean approving of every event. It means refusing to waste your inner life on resistance that produces nothing. There is a difference between action and turmoil. You may act to improve what is within reach. You must not turn that action into obsession. Do the work. Leave the result to what is beyond your command. This matters especially when you think of money. Many people think wealth will calm the mind. It rarely does. It often multiplies desire. A person who cannot govern himself with little will not magically gain wisdom with more. First, learn to want less. Then, learn to use more. First, learn that food is food, clothing is clothing, work is work, and money is a tool. It is neither salvation nor identity. If you place your peace in money, you hand your peace to fortune. If you place your peace in character, you keep it in your own house. Work hard, yes. Build, yes. Earn, yes. But let every effort remain under the command of virtue. A profit gained through dishonesty weakens the soul. A modest life lived with honor strengthens it. A mind that can remain clean while pursuing prosperity is rare and powerful. When desire becomes untrained, it becomes a tyrant. It tells you that your life is incomplete until you possess the next thing. Do not obey it. Desire only what is proper. Desire to be honest. Desire to be useful. Desire to be steady. Desire to meet each hour with courage. Desire to act without shame. If wealth comes, let it come as a result of disciplined action, not as the object of worship. If it does not come, do not become lesser. A person is not measured by his possessions, but by the quality of his mind when possessions are absent. This is one of the hardest truths to accept because pride resists it. Yet it is the truth that frees you. Make a habit of voluntary discomfort, not because suffering is noble in itself, but because dependence is dangerous. Walk without reaching for ease at every moment. Delay a pleasure you do not need. Work when you would rather escape. Stay with a hard task a little longer than you want. Speak less. Scroll less. Spend less. Eat with restraint. Sleep with discipline. Let your mind learn that discomfort is not danger. The person who can endure discomfort without complaint cannot be easily ruled by fear. He becomes less fragile. He becomes harder to knock off course. He learns that the body may be inconvenienced without the soul being defeated. At the end of the day, review yourself with complete honesty. Do not perform this review. Do not excuse yourself. Ask what ruled you today. Ask where you reacted instead of choosing. Ask where you avoided truth. Ask where you sought approval. Ask where you allowed emotion to outrun judgment. Ask where you were lazy. Ask where you were just. Ask where you were courageous. Ask where you were not. Write it down if you must. Let the record be severe. A soul that cannot examine itself will keep repeating the same failures while calling them personality. That is self-deception. You are not here to decorate your habits. You are here to govern them. The point of all this is not to become cold. It is to become free. A calm mind is not a dead mind. It is a mind no longer dragged around by every impulse and fear. It knows what belongs to it and what does not. It spends its energy where it can be effective. It no longer begs the world for permission to be dignified. It acts with reason. It accepts what comes. It gives its full strength to the present duty. This is how you begin to manifest what is truly yours, not by wishing, not by fantasizing, not by trying to command fate. You manifest through character. You manifest through disciplined action. You manifest through steady judgment. You manifest by making yourself worthy of what you seek and capable of holding it without corruption. So today, release what is not yours. Release the urge to control every outcome. Release the need to be understood by everyone. Release the demand that life move according to your impatience. Release the fantasy that peace will arrive after the next achievement. Peace is available now to the mind that accepts its duty. The moment you stop fighting what you cannot govern, you recover the energy needed to govern what you can. That is where your life changes. Not in noise, not in complaint, not in endless desire, in clear attention, in firm choice, in quiet strength. Go back into your day with this one law in your chest. What is mine is my judgment and my conduct. What is not mine, I will meet with composure. Hold to that law when the work is difficult. Hold to it when people disappoint you. Hold to it when results are slow. Hold to it when desire rises. Hold to it when fear speaks. Hold to it when success comes and tries to make you careless. A human being becomes unshakable when he knows the boundary of his power and refuses to live outside it. Do not waste this day pretending that your mind is helpless. It is not helpless. It is untrained. Train it. Do not waste this day blaming the world for what you have not disciplined in yourself. Do not waste this day waiting for conditions to become perfect. They will not. You must learn to live well before conditions improve. That is the mark of a free person. That is the beginning of true wealth. That is the end of inner chaos. That is the life worth living. Number 2. Accept hardship calmly and strengthen your character daily. Pain reveals the truth about your mind faster than comfort ever will. The moment life refuses your preference, your real condition appears, not the image you present to others, not the promises you make when everything is easy. Your true condition is revealed in the instant difficulty enters your day and your mind begins to complain, resist, blame, panic, or retreat. That reaction is the mirror you avoid looking into. Hardship does not create weakness. It exposes weakness that comfort allowed to hide. You say you want peace, yet a small inconvenience can destroy your balance for hours. You say you want strength, yet criticism from one person can poison your entire day. You say you want success, yet one setback convinces you to abandon your discipline. This is not fate working against you. This is an undisciplined mind collapsing under pressure because it has never been trained to remain steady when life becomes difficult. You cannot build a strong character while demanding an easy existence. The two cannot live together. Look closely at what happens inside you when hardship appears. The event itself arrives first. Then your judgment arrives second. A delayed opportunity becomes unbearable because you immediately call it unfair. A mistake becomes humiliation because you decide it destroys your worth. A difficult conversation becomes suffering because your pride refuses correction. The mind adds weight to reality through interpretation. Much of what exhausts you is not the event itself, but the story you attach to it. You suffer less from circumstances than from the habit of resisting them. A disciplined person learns to pause before accepting every impression as truth. When difficulty appears, he does not immediately say something terrible has happened. He examines the moment carefully. He asks whether the hardship truly harms his character or merely challenges his comfort. These are not the same thing. Discomfort is not destruction. Delay is not defeat. Fatigue is not failure. Embarrassment is not death. Yet your mind reacts to these experiences as if your life is collapsing because you have trained yourself to worship ease and avoid resistance. The soul grows through proper use of adversity. A body becomes stronger through resistance, and the same law governs the mind. Without challenge, your patience remains weak. Without uncertainty, your courage remains untested. Without temptation, your discipline remains imaginary. Hardship gives you the opportunity to practice virtue under pressure. That is the only place where virtue becomes real. Anyone can speak calmly when nothing disturbs them. Anyone can appear disciplined when desire is absent. Anyone can claim wisdom while life remains comfortable. The test begins when conditions become difficult. Do not ask life to remove every obstacle. Ask yourself whether you are becoming the kind of person capable of meeting obstacles without losing your reason. That is the question that matters. You waste energy wishing for a smoother path while neglecting the condition of your own mind. A rough road with a disciplined mind is more bearable than a comfortable life ruled by fear and impulse. The quality of your inner life determines whether hardship crushes you or trains you. Each morning, prepare yourself for difficulty before the day begins. Sit quietly for a few moments and remind yourself that today people may disappoint you, misunderstand you, interrupt you, insult you, ignore you, or oppose you. This is not pessimism, this is preparation. A mind that expects only comfort becomes angry at reality the moment reality behaves naturally. But a mind prepared for challenge remains composed when difficulty arrives because it already understood that hardship belongs to life. Then remind yourself what remains within your control regardless of circumstances. Your honesty remains yours. Your patience remains yours. Your effort remains yours. Your restraint remains yours. Your ability to choose your response remains yours. Hold tightly to these things because they cannot be taken unless you surrender them willingly. External conditions may become difficult, but your character is still yours to govern. This realization gives stability during chaos because it returns your attention to what can still be directed wisely. You must stop treating every emotional reaction as authority. Anger rises and you obey it. Fear appears and you surrender your judgment. Frustration enters your mind and immediately your speech becomes careless. This is not self-governance. This is servitude to impulse. A person ruled by emotion cannot remain free because every circumstance controls his state of mind. You become calm not by removing hardship, but by refusing to hand your inner rule over to temporary feelings. When pressure increases, slow your judgment down, speak less, observe more, delay reaction until reason returns. Many regrets begin with immediate emotional obedience. One harsh sentence spoken in anger can damage trust for years. One fearful decision can destroy an opportunity that required courage. One moment of impatience can undo months of disciplined effort. A trained mind does not rush to react because it understands that emotion is often loudest before wisdom has fully arrived. Do not complain about the difficulty of your responsibilities. The complaint weakens you more than the duty itself. Work still needs to be done whether you resent it or not. The family still requires your patience. The task still requires your effort. The hardship still exists after the complaint leaves your mouth. So what has the complaint accomplished except making your mind softer and more bitter? Meet responsibility directly. Carry it with dignity. The disciplined soul wastes no strength arguing against necessity. You also weaken yourself each time you avoid honest self-examination. You know where your habits are disordered. You know where your discipline collapses. You know which distractions steal your attention and which excuses you repeat to avoid action. Yet, instead of correcting these patterns, you often protect them with rationalizations. This is why many people remain trapped for years inside the same cycles. They prefer comfort over truth, but the examined life demands courage. You must be willing to see yourself clearly without hiding behind explanations. At the end of each day, question yourself seriously. Where did irritation control your speech today? Where did comfort weaken your discipline? Where did fear prevent honest action? Where did vanity influence your choices? Where did you waste time pretending to be busy while avoiding meaningful work? These questions are not meant to produce shame. They are meant to produce clarity. A person improves only when he stops lying to himself about the condition of his character. Do not seek admiration for enduring hardship. Endure it because endurance strengthens the soul. Many people turn suffering into performance. They want recognition for carrying burdens, but virtue loses its purity when it becomes theater. Quiet discipline has greater value than dramatic struggle. A steady person does not constantly announce his pain. He simply continues doing what reason demands. You must also learn that hardship often removes illusions that comfort protects. Difficulty shows you who truly governs your life. It reveals whether your happiness depends on praise, possessions, convenience, or control over external events. When these things disappear, your mind becomes exposed. Some people collapse because their identity was built entirely on unstable things, but the disciplined person uses hardship to separate what is essential from what is unnecessary. He discovers that character matters more than appearance and that inner steadiness matters more than temporary success. Train yourself to endure small discomforts voluntarily. Rise earlier than convenience demands. Finish difficult tasks before seeking entertainment. Spend time in silence without reaching for distraction. Practice restraint even when indulgence is available. These acts appear small, but they reshape the mind. They teach you that comfort is not required for peace. They teach you that you can remain stable without constantly satisfying every desire immediately. A person who cannot deny himself small pleasures will eventually become controlled by larger appetites. Your relationship with hardship determines the quality of your future. If you treat every challenge as injustice, you will become resentful. If you treat every discomfort as catastrophe, you will become fragile. If you treat every obstacle as training, your character will deepen. This choice belongs to you every day. Events arrive from outside, but interpretation rises from within. One person becomes bitter through adversity while another becomes wiser. The difference is not fate. The difference is discipline of judgment. Understand this clearly. Calm acceptance does not mean passivity. Stoic acceptance is not surrendering your effort. It means removing emotional rebellion against reality so your mind can act wisely inside the situation. Panic clouds judgment. Self-pity weakens action. Rage blinds reason. But acceptance allows clarity. Once you stop demanding that reality become different, you finally gain the strength to respond effectively to what actually exists. Many of your struggles continue because you keep negotiating with necessary effort. You wait to feel motivated before acting. You wait to feel confident before speaking honestly. You wait to feel comfortable before beginning discipline. Meanwhile, your life keeps moving forward while your character remains undeveloped. Action must come before mood. Duty must come before preference. A rational person acts because the action is right, not because emotion makes it easy. When hardship enters your life, stop asking why this is happening to you. Ask instead what this moment requires from you. Does it require patience? Then practice patience. Does it require courage? Then practice courage. Does it require restraint? Then restrain yourself. This question transforms suffering into training because it shifts attention away from self-pity and toward virtue. Every difficulty becomes an opportunity to strengthen the exact quality your soul lacks. Be careful not to measure your progress by external rewards alone. Sometimes disciplined action produces visible success, and sometimes it does not. But the deeper victory is always internal. The real achievement is becoming less controlled by fear, less disturbed by discomfort, less dependent on praise, and more capable of acting according to reason, even under pressure. That kind of progress cannot be taken from you by changing circumstances. A person who fears hardship remains weak even during periods of comfort because anxiety follows him everywhere. He constantly worries about loss, failure, embarrassment, rejection, and uncertainty. But the person who trains himself through adversity becomes difficult to shake because he already knows he can endure discomfort without losing himself. Confidence grows not from avoiding difficulty, but from surviving it with character intact. You do not need a perfect life to become peaceful. You need a disciplined mind capable of meeting imperfect conditions without surrendering to chaos. That is the work before you. Not controlling the world, not eliminating every obstacle, not arranging reality according to preference. Your task is to govern your judgments, govern your choices, and govern your reactions so completely that hardship no longer turns you against yourself. Life is shorter than your excuses pretend. Time continues moving whether you strengthen your character or neglect it. Every day you either train your mind towards steadiness or reinforce the habits that keep you restless, weak, and reactive. No one else can perform this work for you. No speech can replace practice. No desire for change matters without disciplined action repeated daily. So when the next difficult moment arrives, do not ask for escape. Stand still internally. Observe your judgment carefully. Refuse immediate complaint. Refuse dramatic thinking. Refuse emotional surrender. Meet the moment with reason. Then act according to virtue, one decision at a time. This is how character is built, not in comfort, not in fantasy, not in endless discussion. Character is built in ordinary moments, where the mind chooses discipline over impulse, and truth over avoidance. Accept hardship calmly because resistance multiplies suffering while discipline transforms it. Strengthen your character daily because the condition of your soul shapes every part of your life. Your relationships reflect it. Your work reflects it. Your decisions reflect it. Your peace reflects it. The mind you train today becomes the life you live tomorrow. Number 3. Examine every thought before it controls your actions. Your life changes the moment you stop believing every thought that enters your mind. Until then, you remain a servant to impressions you never examined. A feeling appears and you call it truth. A fear rises and you obey it immediately. A memory returns and your entire mood bends beneath it. An opinion from another person reaches your ears and suddenly your peace disappears. You call this normal because you have lived this way for years. But a mind that reacts without examination cannot govern itself. It drifts from impulse to impulse while imagining it is choosing freely. You are not disturbed first by events. You are disturbed by the judgments you attach to events. A person ignores your message and your mind instantly creates rejection. A mistake happens at work and your mind declares disaster. Someone succeeds before you and your mind whispers that you are falling behind. None of these conclusions arrive from reason. They arrive from habit. They are automatic interpretations, shaped by fear, vanity, insecurity, and emotional dependence. If you do not examine them carefully, they become commands that control your speech, decisions, and relationships. Watch your mind honestly for one day, and you will see how quickly it rushes to conclusions. One uncomfortable moment, and your thoughts begin producing accusations, assumptions, predictions, and resentments without restraint. You rarely stop to ask whether these mental reactions deserve trust. Instead, you merge with them completely. You become angry because anger appeared. You become discouraged because discouragement entered your thoughts. You become anxious because your imagination created a future it cannot actually see. This is not rational living. This is surrender to internal noise. The disciplined mind creates distance between itself and its first reaction. It understands that an impression is not yet reality. The appearance of a thought does not make the thought wise. A suspicion is not evidence. An emotion is not judgment. The first movement of the mind often comes from old habits rather than careful reasoning. If you act too quickly, you become controlled by patterns you never consciously chose. Consider how many unnecessary conflicts begin this way. Someone speaks with a certain tone, and immediately your pride interprets disrespect. Without reflection, your voice changes, your posture hardens, and your words become sharp. Hours later, the situation has grown heavier, not because the original event demanded conflict, but because your unexamined interpretation directed your behavior. You believed your first emotional conclusion without questioning whether it deserved authority. This same pattern governs your private struggles. You tell yourself you are incapable before you have fully attempted the work. You call temporary difficulty proof of permanent weakness. You treat one failure as a final verdict on your future. Then your actions begin obeying these conclusions. Effort weakens, discipline collapses, hope disappears. Yet the original thought was never examined carefully. You simply accepted it because it arrived with strong emotion attached to it. A rational life begins when you slow this process down. When a thought enters your mind, stop immediately granting it permission to direct your behavior. Hold it still, look at it carefully. Ask whether it concerns something within your control or outside it. Ask whether it strengthens your character or weakens it. Ask whether it encourages virtue or feeds appetite, fear, resentment, vanity, or laziness. Thoughts that lead you away from reason deserve resistance, not obedience. You have trained yourself for years to react instantly. This is why silence feels uncomfortable to you. Reflection feels slow because impulse has become your habit. But wisdom requires pause. A person who never pauses becomes predictable to every emotion. Anger pulls him one way, Fear pulls him another. Praise inflates him. Criticism crushes him. Desire drags him toward excess. He becomes divided internally because he has never established reason as ruler over his inner life. Begin training attention from the first moments of the morning. Before speaking to anyone, before touching your devices, before entering the noise of the day, sit quietly and observe your mind. Notice what thoughts arrive first. Some will already carry tension, ambition, comparison, worry, or distraction. Do not fight them emotionally. Examine them calmly. Ask whether they deserve your energy. Ask whether they are preparing you for disciplined action or emotional confusion. This morning examination strengthens your ability to recognize destructive thinking before it governs the rest of the day. Then choose one principle to carry deliberately into your actions. Perhaps patience during conversation, perhaps restraint during frustration, perhaps honesty when temptation appears. Keep returning to this principle throughout the day. The purpose is not perfection. The purpose is awareness. An examined mind catches itself earlier. It notices when judgment begins drifting toward irrational conclusions. It interrupts patterns before they become behavior. Your suffering often grows because you speak to yourself carelessly. You allow thoughts inside your mind that you would never permit from another person. You call yourself hopeless, weak, incapable, ruined, forgotten behind, worthless. Then you wonder why your spirit becomes heavy. A rational mind does not use language that destroys its own capacity for action. Discipline your internal speech carefully. This does not mean flattering yourself or pretending difficulty does not exist. It means speaking truthfully instead of emotionally. Replace exaggeration with precision. Instead of saying everything is collapsing, say this situation is difficult but manageable through disciplined action. Instead of saying you are a failure, say you made an error that now requires correction. Precision restores reason, where emotional language creates chaos. You must also examine pleasant thoughts, not only painful ones. Desire often disguises itself as harmless imagination, while quietly weakening judgment. Your mind begins constructing fantasies about recognition, wealth, comfort, revenge, admiration, or endless ease. Soon you become attached to outcomes beyond your authority. Then anxiety enters because reality refuses to obey your imagination completely. Examine these thoughts carefully before they mature into dependency. Ask whether your peace now depends upon obtaining external things. If it does, your stability has already been surrendered. The disciplined person enjoys what arrives without chaining his peace to its continuation. He understands that external circumstances remain uncertain by nature. Relationships change, finances fluctuate, health shifts, public opinion moves constantly. If your inner condition rises and falls with these external changes, you will remain emotionally unstable regardless of your achievements. Lasting steadiness requires grounding your peace in character rather than circumstance. This examination of thought must continue during conflict, especially when emotion becomes intense. In difficult moments, your mind will demand immediate reaction. It will insist that silence means weakness or restraint means defeat. But strength often appears through measured response, not emotional speed. Pause before speaking when anger rises. Delay judgment until emotion loses its sharpness. Many painful consequences enter life through words spoken too quickly by an unchecked mind. Learn to question the stories you tell yourself about other people. Much resentment grows from assumptions never tested against reality. You assume motives without evidence. You interpret actions through insecurity. You personalize behavior that may have nothing to do with you. Then bitterness develops towards situations you never truly understood. A rational person remains cautious about conclusions. He does not rush to condemn because he recognizes how limited his perspective often is. At times, your own mind becomes the greatest source of confusion because it constantly drags attention toward what cannot be controlled. It replays old conversations endlessly. It imagines future disasters repeatedly. It obsesses over how others perceive you. Meanwhile, the present moment where action is actually possible receives little attention. This is why your energy becomes scattered. The mind spends itself on speculation instead of disciplined effort. Bring your attention back to what is immediately before you, not the imagined future, not the rewritten past. Ask what this present hour requires. Perhaps it requires concentration. Perhaps it requires restraint. Perhaps it requires courage to begin work you have delayed. Reality becomes manageable when the mind stops carrying unnecessary psychological weight across time. Each evening, review your thinking with honesty. Do not merely review your actions. Examine the thoughts that produced them. Ask yourself which judgments weakened your conduct today, which assumptions stole your peace unnecessarily, which emotional conclusions you accepted without evidence, which desires distracted you from meaningful effort, which fears controlled your decisions. This nightly discipline exposes the architecture of your inner life. Without such examination, the same hidden patterns continue directing behavior year after year. Do not expect immediate mastery over your thoughts. The mind has practiced disorder for a long time. It will continue producing impulsive reactions, emotional exaggerations, and irrational conclusions. The goal is not preventing every unhelpful thought from appearing. The goal is refusing automatic obedience once it appears. Freedom exists in your ability to examine, rather than immediately identify with every mental movement. A person who governs thought carefully becomes difficult to disturb because external events no longer possess direct access to his behavior. Between event and response, reason now stands guard. This creates inner steadiness. Pressure may still arrive, emotion may still arise naturally, but judgment no longer collapses under every internal impulse. The mind learns to remain seated firmly within itself. Understand clearly that your character is shaped repeatedly by the thoughts you permit to remain unchallenged. Thoughts become attitudes. Attitudes become actions. Actions repeated become habits. Habits shape destiny quietly over years. Small mental indiscipline therefore carries enormous consequences over time. One unchecked resentment can poison relationships for decades. One unchallenged fear can prevent an entire life of meaningful action. One repeated excuse can slowly destroy personal integrity. For this reason, mental discipline is not optional for a serious person. You cannot live wisely while thinking carelessly. You cannot create peace through a mind addicted to exaggeration, comparison, emotional reaction, and imagined catastrophe. The condition of your thoughts determines the condition of your life, because every outward action begins internally first. Do not wait for dramatic moments to practice this discipline. Train yourself during ordinary situations. When delayed in traffic, examine impatience before it controls your mood. When criticized, examine defensiveness before it shapes your reply. When praised, examine vanity before it inflates your ego. When tempted, examine desire before it weakens restraint. Daily life provides constant opportunity for training if your attention remains awake. The mind you fail to govern will eventually govern you. It will pull you toward anger when calmness is needed. It will push you toward distraction when duty requires focus. It will create fear where courage should stand. It will magnify discomfort into suffering. Then you will spend years wondering why peace feels distant while continuing to obey the very thoughts that destroy it. So become stricter with your inner life. Not harsh in a destructive sense, but disciplined in a truthful sense. Refuse to let every impression enter your mind unchecked. Refuse to build conclusions from temporary emotions. Refuse to let fear speak with the authority of reason. Learn to sit quietly with a thought before accepting it. Learn to examine it from every side. Learn to ask whether it leads toward virtue or away from it. Your freedom begins inside this practice, not in changing the world around you, but in changing your relationship with your own thinking. Once your judgments become clearer, your actions become steadier. Once your actions become steadier, your character deepens. Once your character deepens, your life stops being directed by impulse and begins being directed by conscious principle. Examine every thought before it controls your actions, because an unexamined mind cannot lead a disciplined life. Your future depends less on external conditions than on the quality of judgment you bring to each moment. Guard that judgment carefully, train it daily, correct it honestly. Then your mind will no longer behave like an enemy pulling you away from peace, but like an ally guiding you steadily toward reason, virtue, and inner freedom. Number 4. Discipline desire, so wealth serves virtue, not vanity. Money reveals the condition of your character long before it improves your life. Give wealth to a disciplined person, and it becomes a tool for responsibility, stability, generosity, and meaningful work. Give wealth to an undisciplined person, and it becomes fuel for vanity, excess, restlessness, and dependence. The problem is not wealth itself. The problem is the condition of the mind reaching for it. If desire governs you before success arrives, then success will only magnify your disorder. Look carefully at what you call ambition. Much of it is not guided by reason. It is guided by comparison, insecurity, and hunger for recognition. You tell yourself you want financial freedom, but your thoughts constantly return to how others will see you once you possess more. Your imagination becomes filled with admiration, status, comfort, and superiority. This is how desire quietly corrupts judgment. Wealth stops being a practical resource and becomes emotional proof that you matter. From that moment, your peace becomes chained to outcomes you cannot fully control. A mind ruled by appetite cannot remain calm because desire constantly expands beyond what is already present. Satisfaction becomes temporary. Achievement loses its effect quickly. One purchase creates the urge for another. One success produces anxiety about maintaining it. One level of comfort raises expectations for more comfort. The person believes he is moving toward happiness while actually moving deeper into dependency. Desire promises completion while keeping the soul permanently unsettled. You must learn to distinguish between useful wealth and psychological attachment to wealth. Useful wealth provides shelter, food, security, education, the ability to fulfill responsibilities, and the opportunity to act generously toward others. Psychological attachment is different. It turns money into identity. It makes self-worth rise and fall with financial outcomes. It causes panic during loss and arrogance during gain. It tempts you to sacrifice honesty in exchange for advancement. Once wealth becomes tied to ego, your character begins serving your appetite instead of your principles. Observe how quickly people abandon virtue when desire becomes intense. They speak falsely to protect income. They betray trust for opportunity. They flatter those they secretly resent because status appears useful. They exhaust themselves chasing appearances that impress strangers while neglecting the condition of their own minds. Outward success often hides inward disorder. A person may appear prosperous while remaining emotionally fragile, morally compromised, and internally dependent on constant external validation. This is why discipline of desire matters more than possession itself. If your wants remain uncontrolled, no amount of achievement will produce peace. The undisciplined mind carries poverty into abundance because it always feels deprived of something more. But the trained mind carries stability even through uncertainty because it knows how to remain content with what reason declares sufficient. Begin each morning by examining what you are truly pursuing through your work and effort. Ask yourself whether your goals strengthen your character or merely inflate your vanity. Ask whether your pursuit of success is making you more honest, more disciplined, more useful, and more steady, or whether it is making you more anxious, more envious, more distracted, and more dependent on recognition. Wealth pursued without self-examination easily becomes corruption disguised as ambition. You must also examine the hidden emotional promises you attach to money. Many people secretly believe wealth will finally remove insecurity, loneliness, inadequacy, or inner confusion, but external gain cannot repair an undisciplined soul. A fearful mind remains fearful with greater possessions. A vain mind becomes more vain when admired publicly. A restless person simply acquires more distractions. Inner disorder follows you into every new level of achievement unless you correct it directly through disciplined thought and action. Train yourself to desire less than impulse demands. This does not mean rejecting productive work or refusing material improvement. It means refusing slavery to unnecessary craving. Learn to pause before every purchase, every ambition, every comparison, and ask whether the desire arises from reason or emotional emptiness. Many desires lose their power once examined honestly. You discover that much of what you wanted was not truly needed for a good life. Practice temporary denial of comforts you can easily afford. Eat simple meals sometimes even when richer options exist. Spend a day without unnecessary entertainment. Delay purchases that promise emotional satisfaction. Wear ordinary clothing without seeking admiration. These practices expose how many comforts have quietly become psychological requirements. The mind grows stronger when it learns that peace does not depend upon constant indulgence. You weaken yourself each time you obey every urge immediately. Desire becomes stronger through repeated surrender. The mind begins expecting instant gratification in all areas of life. Patience fades, discipline weakens, attention fragments. Soon even minor discomfort feels unbearable because appetite has become accustomed to immediate satisfaction. A person without restraint cannot pursue meaningful goals steadily because impulse constantly interrupts long-term reason. Financial discipline therefore begins internally before it appears externally. A person who cannot govern spending often cannot govern emotion either. Both arise from the same habit of obeying impulse without examination. Before purchasing, ask whether the action serves necessity, vanity, boredom, loneliness, insecurity, or comparison. Many financial mistakes begin as emotional attempts to repair inner dissatisfaction through external acquisition. You must also guard yourself against envy, because envy destroys gratitude and corrupts judgment. The mind compares constantly when left untrained. Someone else advances faster. Someone else earns more. Someone else receives attention, recognition, influence, or luxury. Then bitterness quietly enters the soul. But envy reveals confusion about what truly matters. Another person's possessions cannot improve your character. Another person's success does not diminish your ability to live wisely. Comparison becomes poison when identity depends upon external rank. A rational person measures wealth differently. He asks whether his resources are acquired honestly, used responsibly, and held without attachment. He does not worship poverty nor idolize luxury. He understands that external possessions remain temporary tools rather than permanent sources of worth. If fortune provides abundance, he accepts it without arrogance. If conditions become modest, he adjusts without humiliation. His stability comes from character, not circumstance. Do not misunderstand this teaching. There is nothing virtuous about laziness disguised as simplicity. You should work seriously. You should develop skill. You should fulfill responsibilities competently. You should pursue excellence in your labor because disciplined effort honors reason. But while working toward prosperity, never allow financial outcomes to determine your moral boundaries. Some opportunities damage the soul while enriching the bank account. A wise person recognizes this immediately and refuses profit purchased through dishonor. Examine how often fear of losing status controls behavior. People remain dishonest because they fear financial decline. They tolerate corruption because they fear exclusion. They exhaust themselves maintaining appearances because they fear judgment from others. Yet all of this anxiety arises from misplaced value. You have granted external opinion authority over your inner life. The person who fears appearing ordinary becomes easy to manipulate because vanity now governs his choices. Return often to the reality that your time remains limited. Wealth accumulation without character development produces an empty life, regardless of public admiration. Years disappear quickly while people postpone integrity, waiting for some future moment when they finally intend to live according to principle. But habits strengthen through repetition. Every compromise repeated becomes easier the next time. Soon the person barely recognizes how far he has drifted from his original values. At the end of each day, review your relationship with desire honestly. Ask where greed influenced your thinking. Ask where comparison disturbed your peace. Ask where vanity affected your decisions. Ask whether your work today strengthened virtue or merely fed appetite. Ask whether your use of money reflected wisdom, restraint, and responsibility, or emotional impulse. These questions expose the hidden motives governing your actions. Teach yourself to enjoy simple things fully without demanding constant stimulation. A quiet evening, meaningful work completed honestly, food eaten with gratitude, conversation without performance, solitude without loneliness, rest without guilt. These experiences train the mind towards sufficiency. A person who cannot appreciate ordinary life will never feel satisfied, regardless of possessions, because dissatisfaction lives internally, not externally. Understand clearly that wealth itself carries no moral guarantee. It can support virtue or intensify vice, depending on the condition of the person using it. The disciplined individual remains measured during prosperity because he remembers that fortune changes easily. He does not become intoxicated by success. He does not begin treating others with contempt. He does not assume material gain proves moral superiority. He continues examining himself carefully because external achievement often tempts people into deeper blindness regarding their flaws. The strongest financial position is not unlimited abundance, but reduced dependency. When fewer things are required for your peace, you become harder to control through fear, temptation, or social pressure. Simplicity creates freedom because it weakens the power external conditions hold over your emotional state. The person who can live reasonably with little possesses inner security that extravagant lifestyles often destroy. Many people spend their lives pursuing symbols rather than substance. They chase appearances of success while neglecting wisdom, courage, justice, restraint, and honesty. Yet these virtues determine whether success improves life or corrupts it. Without virtue, wealth becomes another unstable object, constantly demanding protection, maintenance, and emotional investment. With virtue, wealth becomes manageable because character remains the higher authority. You must stop imagining that self-control limits freedom. Self-control creates freedom. The person who cannot resist desire becomes predictable to every temptation. Advertisements influence him easily. Social pressure redirects him quickly. Emotional impulses guide spending habits constantly. He mistakes appetite for personal choice while remaining controlled by external stimulation. But the disciplined person chooses carefully because reason evaluates desire before action occurs. Train yourself, therefore, to pause whenever strong wanting appears. Observe the sensation without rushing to satisfy it. Ask whether the desire aligns with your principles or merely promises temporary emotional relief. Ask whether fulfilling it strengthens your life or weakens your discipline. The pause itself develops mastery because it interrupts automatic obedience to impulse. You do not need to fear wealth. You need to fear becoming morally dependent upon it. You need to fear the gradual erosion of integrity through unchecked ambition. You need to fear building a life so attached to luxury, approval, and status that simplicity begins feeling unbearable. A strong soul remains capable of dignity under changing conditions because its worth comes from conduct rather than possessions. So pursue prosperity with clarity, not desperation. Build patiently, work honestly, save responsibly, use resources wisely, but remain watchful over your inner condition at every stage. Let your possessions remain servants, not masters. Let ambition remain guided by virtue, not vanity. Let reason govern desire before desire governs your life. When you finally understand this, your relationship with success changes completely. You stop chasing wealth as emotional salvation. You stop measuring yourself through comparison. You stop sacrificing peace for appearances. You become capable of building materially without collapsing spiritually. That is true abundance, not possessing everything but remaining inwardly free while possessing whatever life places temporarily in your hands. Number 5. Train your mind to remain steady under pressure. Pressure does not break a person suddenly. It reveals what was already unsteady inside him. The moment demands clarity, but the mind responds with noise. The situation asks for discipline, but thought rushes into panic. The responsibility requires calm judgment, but emotion takes control and begins rewriting reality into fear, frustration, or urgency. You do not lose stability in pressure because pressure is strong. You lose stability because your mind has never been trained to remain governed by reason when intensity rises. Look at your own reactions honestly. When something important is at stake, your thoughts begin to accelerate. You imagine outcomes that have not occurred. You assume failure before effort is complete. You interpret silence as rejection. You interpret delay as loss. You interpret difficulty as proof that you are not ready. None of this comes from clear judgment. It comes from uncontrolled interpretation. You are not responding to reality directly. You are reacting to your thoughts about reality. That is why pressure feels overwhelming. You are carrying both the situation and your unexamined mental commentary about it. A steady mind begins by refusing immediate agreement with its own impressions. Every situation arrives first as raw experience, then the mind adds interpretation. Most people never separate the two. They treat the first thought as truth simply because it appears quickly and strongly. But speed is not wisdom. Intensity is not accuracy. A thought that arrives under pressure is often shaped by fear of loss, fear of embarrassment, or fear of uncertainty. If you obey it immediately, you allow fear to lead your actions instead of reason. You must learn to pause internally at the exact moment pressure appears, not to escape responsibility, but to reclaim control over judgment. The pause is not physical delay, it is inner separation between event and reaction. In that space, you regain the ability to decide what the situation actually means rather than what your emotions suggest it means. Without this space, pressure controls you. With this space, you begin to govern yourself even when circumstances are unstable. Consider how many mistakes come from emotional acceleration. A deadline appears and your mind rushes into chaos. A disagreement begins and your words become sharper than your judgment intends. A mistake happens and you immediately conclude that everything is ruined. A challenge arises and you assume collapse is near. These reactions are not responses to reality. They are reactions to discomfort. You are trying to escape pressure internally instead of meeting it with clarity. Pressure exposes one critical weakness in most people. They believe stability comes from controlling outcomes rather than controlling judgment. So when outcomes feel uncertain, their mind collapses. But outcomes have never been fully under your command. What has always been yours is the ability to evaluate impressions correctly. That is where strength must be built, not in controlling events, but in controlling interpretation of events. Train your mind to identify what belongs to you and what does not the moment pressure rises. The situation itself is not fully yours. The opinions of others are not yours. The speed at which results appear is not yours. The difficulty level of the task is not yours. What remains yours is your choice of response, your discipline, your attention, your restraint, your willingness to continue acting according to reason, even when discomfort increases. If you confuse these categories, you will constantly feel overwhelmed because you are attempting to control what cannot be controlled. Each morning, prepare your mind for pressure instead of avoiding it mentally. Do not assume the day will remain smooth. Assume the opposite. Assume interruptions will appear. Assume demands will increase. Assume things will not go according to preference. This is not pessimism, it is preparation. A mind that expects ease is fragile. A mind that expects difficulty remains adaptable. When pressure arrives unexpectedly, it hits the unprepared mind like a shock. But when it is expected, it becomes simply another condition to work within. During the day, practice slowing down your interpretation of events. When something stressful happens, do not immediately assign meaning to it. Hold the impression in awareness without judgment for a moment. Ask whether your first interpretation is based on fact or fear. Ask whether you are reacting to the situation or to imagined consequences. Most mental suffering under pressure comes from projecting future disasters onto present events. Remove that projection and much of the weight disappears. You also need to observe how pressure changes your sense of urgency. Under stress, the mind begins to believe everything must be solved immediately or everything will fail. This creates frantic behavior rather than effective action. But real control comes from prioritizing correctly, not reacting quickly. A calm mind under pressure identifies what is essential and what can wait. It does not scatter attention across everything at once. It focuses only on what requires action now and ignores what is merely noise created by anxiety. Your emotional reactions under pressure often come from attachment to outcomes. You want success without uncertainty. You want progress without difficulty. You want recognition without risk of failure. You want control over how others respond to your actions. These expectations create internal resistance whenever reality does not comply. Pressure then feels heavier than it actually is because you are not only dealing with the task, but also resisting its conditions. Acceptance removes this unnecessary resistance. It does not make the task easier externally, but it makes your mind clearer internally. A trained mind does not confuse discomfort with danger. Under pressure, the body may feel tension, but tension is not a signal of destruction. It is a signal that effort is required. If you interpret tension as threat, you will panic. If you interpret it as requirement, you will act. The difference is entirely in judgment. The event remains the same. Only interpretation changes. When you feel overwhelmed during important situations, bring attention back to the present action required, not the entire outcome, not the entire future, just the immediate step in front of you. Pressure grows when your mind expands beyond the present task and tries to solve everything at once. But reason operates step by step. It does not need to control the entire future to function correctly in the present. It only needs clarity about what is required now. You must also train yourself to observe your internal dialogue under pressure. Notice how quickly it becomes self-critical or catastrophizing. The mind begins saying, "You are not ready, you will fail, you are falling behind, this is too much, this will not work." These are not rational conclusions. They are emotional expressions disguised as thoughts. If you do not challenge them, they begin directing your behavior. But if you examine them closely, you will see they have no solid foundation. They are assumptions produced by stress, not truth discovered through reasoning. Replace this internal noise with deliberate judgment. Instead of asking, "What if I fail?" ask, "What is the correct action right now?" Instead of asking, "What if this becomes worse?" ask, "What part of this situation is under my control at this moment?" Instead of asking, "How will others judge me?" ask whether I am acting according to reason and discipline. These questions return authority to the rational mind instead of emotional reaction. You build steadiness under pressure through repetition of these small inner corrections. Each time you pause before reacting, you strengthen your ability to govern yourself. Each time you choose reason over impulse, you reinforce mental stability. Each time you refuse to let fear dictate interpretation, you reduce its influence over time. This is not instant transformation, it is gradual training of perception. Even failure itself becomes training when approached correctly. A steady mind does not collapse when things go wrong. It examines the situation, identifies what can still be done, and continues without emotional exaggeration. Collapse happens when a person believes failure defines identity. But failure is only information about action, not judgment about character. When you separate these two, pressure loses its power to destabilize you. There will be moments when external demands exceed your comfort, when expectations feel heavy, when decisions must be made under uncertainty. These are not signs of weakness in your life, they are tests of whether your inner discipline has been developed. A trained mind does not wait for perfect conditions to remain steady. It remains steady because it has practiced steadiness in imperfect conditions repeatedly. At the end of each day, examine how you responded under pressure. Where did you react too quickly? Where did fear influence your judgment? Where did impatience distort your decisions? Where did you lose clarity because you accepted your first thought without examination? This reflection is not for regret, it is for correction. Awareness turns repetition into improvement. Pressure will always exist in different forms throughout life. You cannot remove it from your path, but you can change the way your mind meets it. A calm mind under pressure is not a mind without challenge. It is a mind that has learned not to surrender its authority when challenge appears. It remains anchored in reason while circumstances move around it. Train this ability daily, not in imagination, but in real moments of difficulty. Each time pressure rises, treat it as an opportunity to practice inner governance, not as a threat to your peace, but as material for strengthening it. Over time, you will notice something important. The same situations that once destabilized you will no longer control your internal state, not because life became easier, but because your mind became trained to remain steady when life is not easy. Number 6. Govern your reactions and protect your inner peace. You lose your inner peace long before life actually disturbs you. The loss begins the moment you stop governing your reactions and start obeying them. A single comment changes your mood, a small delay ruins your focus, a tone in someone's voice determines your emotional state, an unexpected event decides the quality of your entire day. This is not control over life, this is surrender to impulse disguised as sensitivity. Look closely at what actually happens inside you in difficult moments. An event occurs and immediately the mind produces interpretation. That interpretation carries emotional weight and you accept it without examination. Someone ignores you and you feel rejected. Someone disagrees with you and you feel attacked. Something goes wrong and you feel personally diminished. Yet none of these emotional reactions come from reason. They come from automatic judgment that was never questioned. You are not reacting to reality itself. You are reacting to your thoughts about reality. This is why inner peace feels unstable. It is built on reactions instead of principles. A reactive mind has no foundation because it changes with every external trigger. It is pulled in every direction by circumstances it cannot control. One moment calm, the next moment disturbed. One moment confident, the next moment doubtful. This instability is not caused by life. It is caused by ungoverned response. To protect inner peace, you must first understand what it actually is. It is not the absence of difficulty. It is not the absence of conflict or disappointment or pressure. It is the condition of a mind that refuses to abandon reason when these things appear. Peace is not what happens around you. It is what remains within you when you refuse to be ruled by reaction. Every reaction begins as an impression. A mental image appears and tries to present itself as truth. Most people accept this impression instantly. They do not pause. They do not question. They do not examine whether it is accurate or useful. They simply move from impression to emotion to action without reflection. That sequence creates most of the suffering people experience, not the event itself, but the unexamined chain that follows it. You must interrupt this chain, not after it completes, but at the very beginning. When an impression arises, you do not immediately obey it. You observe it. You hold it in awareness long enough to evaluate it. You ask whether it is within your control or outside it. You ask whether it strengthens your character or weakens it. You ask whether it is based on fact or assumption. This pause is where your freedom exists. Without it, you are governed by reflex. With it, you begin to govern yourself. Most people believe they are expressing themselves when they react quickly. In truth, they are revealing lack of discipline. Reaction without reflection is not authenticity. It is impulsiveness. A person who speaks immediately under emotional pressure is not expressing truth. He is expressing disturbance. A person who acts immediately under anger is not demonstrating strength. He is demonstrating lack of control. Real strength appears in the ability to remain guided by reason even when emotion rises. Your inner peace is constantly interrupted by judgments you never challenged. You label situations as unfair and immediately feel resentment. You label people as disrespectful and immediately feel anger. You label setbacks as disasters and immediately feel despair. These labels are not reality. They are interpretations shaped by expectation and desire. If you do not examine them, they become emotional commands. You begin living according to distorted conclusions instead of clear observation. To govern reactions, you must first reclaim ownership over interpretation. No event contains emotional meaning on its own. Meaning is assigned by your mind. The same situation can be interpreted in multiple ways depending on judgment. A delay can be seen as obstacle or opportunity for patience. Criticism can be seen as insult or information for improvement. Loss can be seen as destruction or correction of attachment. Your peace depends on which interpretation you choose to accept. Begin each morning by preparing your mind for disturbance. Do not assume the day will remain aligned with your preferences. Assume that interruptions will occur. Assume that people will act unpredictably. Assume that things will not unfold exactly as planned. This preparation is not pessimism. It is mental discipline. A prepared mind does not interpret difficulty as surprise. It interprets it as expected material for practice. This reduces emotional volatility when events unfold differently than desired. Then remind yourself clearly what belongs to you and what does not. Your reactions belong to you. Your judgments belong to you. Your choices belong to you. Your attention belongs to you. Everything else does not belong to you in the same way. The behavior of others is not yours. The outcomes of events are not yours. The timing of results is not yours. The approval of others is not yours. If you confuse these boundaries, you will constantly attempt to control what cannot be controlled and neglect what can be governed internally. When an emotional reaction arises during the day, do not immediately suppress it or express it. Observe it first. Name it internally without exaggeration. Recognize it as a movement of the mind rather than truth. Anger is appearing, anxiety is appearing, frustration is appearing. This simple recognition creates distance between you and the reaction. In that distance you regain authority. Without naming it, you become identical with it. With awareness, you remain separate from it. Many people believe protecting inner peace means avoiding all triggering situations. This is mistaken. Avoidance does not create strength. It creates dependency on favorable conditions. A person who must avoid difficulty to remain calm is not truly peaceful. He is fragile. Real inner stability is tested and strengthened in contact with disturbance. The goal is not to eliminate triggers. The goal is to eliminate automatic surrender to them. You must also examine how often your reactions are driven by ego rather than reason. Ego reacts quickly to perceived insult. It demands immediate correction of how others treat you. It insists on defending status, image, and recognition. But reason asks a different question. Is this worth disturbing my mind over? Many situations that feel urgent to ego are actually insignificant to character. Protecting peace requires learning to ignore what does not deserve your attention. When conflict arises in conversation, slow your response. Do not answer immediately from emotion. Let silence separate stimulus from reply. In that space you can choose language instead of being driven by impulse. Many arguments escalate not because truth demands escalation, but because reactions are too fast to be guided by reason. A delayed response often prevents unnecessary damage. You should also observe how memory influences your reactions. The mind does not only respond to present events, it also drags in past experiences and uses them to interpret current situations. Someone reminds you of a previous hurt, and suddenly your reaction becomes heavier than the present moment requires. You are not reacting to what is actually happening, you are reacting to what has happened before. This blending of past and present distorts judgment and disturbs peace. To remain steady, you must return attention repeatedly to what is actually present now, not imagined continuation of past patterns, not projected future outcomes, only the current moment as it is. When you stay with what is present, the mind becomes less reactive because it is no longer building emotional conclusions from memory and fear. It is simply observing reality directly. At the end of each day, examine your reactions without excuse. Where did you lose control of tone? Where did emotion speak before reason? Where did irritation influence behavior? Where did fear shape decisions? Where did you allow external events to dictate internal condition? This reflection is not for punishment, it is for recognition. Without recognition, there can be no correction. Inner peace is not something you receive. It is something you protect through continuous discipline. Every reaction either strengthens that protection or weakens it. A single uncontrolled response may not seem significant in isolation, but repeated daily it forms a pattern of instability. Conversely, each moment where you pause before reacting builds the habit of steadiness. Over time, you begin to notice a change. Events that once immediately disturbed you no longer penetrate your inner state so easily, not because life has become easier, but because your reactions are no longer automatic. There is space between event and response. In that space, reason operates, and where reason operates, peace is no longer fragile. A governed mind does not depend on favorable circumstances. It depends on disciplined judgment. It does not wait for the world to behave correctly before remaining calm. It remains calm because it has trained itself not to surrender authority to impulse. This is how inner peace is protected, not by controlling everything outside, but by refusing to lose control inside. Number 7. Choose reason first, and let fear fall silent. Fear does not arrive to guide you. It arrives to interrupt your judgment. The moment fear speaks inside your mind, it tries to present itself as wisdom, urgency, and protection. But in truth, it is only a reaction shaped by uncertainty and imagination. It does not see reality clearly. It multiplies possibilities of harm and ignores possibilities of strength. If you allow it to lead your decisions, you are no longer governed by reason. You are governed by distortion. Look closely at how fear operates in your daily life. It does not wait for real danger. It activates in anticipation. Before anything has happened, it begins constructing outcomes that may never occur. You are about to speak and fear says you will be judged. You are about to act and fear says you will fail. You are about to decide and fear says you are not ready. These are not conclusions based on evidence. They are emotional forecasts created by a mind trying to avoid discomfort. If you accept them without examination, you begin living defensively instead of rationally. You call this caution. You call it thinking things through. But much of what you call careful thinking is actually fear wearing the appearance of intelligence. Real reasoning does not begin with avoidance, it begins with clarity. It asks what is actually known, what is assumed, and what is within your control. Fear skips this process entirely. It moves directly from uncertainty to conclusion without inspection. That is why it feels powerful, but produces confusion. To choose reason first is to refuse immediate obedience to fear. This does not mean fear disappears. It means fear loses authority. It becomes something observed rather than something followed. The disciplined mind notices fear as a mental event, not a command. It says this is fear appearing, not this is truth revealed. That small separation changes everything. Without it, fear governs action. With it, reason regains control. You weaken yourself each time you treat fear as instruction. A hesitation appears and you delay necessary action. A worry arises and you abandon clarity. A sense of insecurity grows and you reshape your decisions around avoiding discomfort rather than pursuing what is right. Over time, this creates a life directed by avoidance. You stop acting according to principle and start acting according to emotional safety. But a life guided by safety alone becomes small, reactive, and disconnected from strength. Reason has a different nature. It does not promise comfort. It seeks correctness. It evaluates what is appropriate in the present moment without being influenced by imagined outcomes. It does not ask what will feel easiest. It asks what is justified. It does not ask what removes fear. It asks what aligns with virtue and responsibility. When reason leads, fear may still appear, but it no longer determines direction. Each morning you must prepare your mind for encounters with fear, not by trying to eliminate it, but by training yourself to recognize it early. Expect that situations will arise that trigger uncertainty. Expect that your mind will attempt to predict negative outcomes without evidence. Expect that hesitation will appear before important actions. This expectation prevents surprise. A mind that is not surprised by fear is less likely to obey it. When fear appears during the day, slow the process of response. Do not allow immediate reaction. Pause internally and observe what is actually happening in your thinking. Separate fact from interpretation. Ask what is directly present and what is imagined. Fear thrives in imagination. It weakens when brought back to facts. Most feared outcomes exist only as projections, not as present realities. You must also examine how fear influences your identity. Fear often disguises itself as self-protection. It tells you that avoiding risk preserves who you are. It tells you that staying silent preserves relationships. It tells you that postponing action preserves opportunity. But in reality, it often preserves limitation. It keeps you within familiar boundaries that feel safe but prevent growth. Over time, this creates a life shaped more by avoidance than by intention. To choose reason first is to accept temporary discomfort in exchange for long-term clarity. Fear demands immediate relief. Reason accepts short-term tension if it leads to correct action. Fear wants certainty before movement. Reason understands that certainty rarely comes before action. Fear demands guarantee. Reason requires only understanding of what is within your control and commitment to act accordingly. Many of your regrets do not come from acting with reason. They come from acting under fear. You avoid speaking truth and later regret silence. You avoid starting and later regret delay. You avoid challenging yourself and later regret stagnation. Fear presents avoidance as safety in the moment, but produces dissatisfaction over time. Reason may feel difficult in the moment, but produces stability afterward. You must begin observing how often fear distorts perception of your capabilities. It tells you that you are less prepared than you are. It exaggerates consequences of mistakes. It minimizes your ability to adapt. It frames challenges as threats rather than tasks. If you do not question these interpretations, you will consistently underestimate your own capacity. But when examined carefully, most feared situations reveal themselves as manageable with steady action. When faced with decisions, do not ask what removes fear most quickly. Ask what judgment remains valid after fear is removed. Imagine your mind without emotional disturbance. What would reason choose in that state? That is often the correct direction. Fear distorts judgment by adding emotional weight to options that do not deserve it. Remove the weight and clarity returns. You also need to recognize how fear uses time against you. It pulls attention away from the present moment into imagined futures. It convinces you that something bad is already unfolding even when nothing has occurred. This creates suffering without reality. The present moment rarely contains what fear describes. It contains only tasks, choices, and conditions that require response, not panic. To remain aligned with reason, you must repeatedly return attention to what is directly in front of you, not future projections, not past memories of similar situations, only the present requirement. Fear grows when attention expands beyond what can be acted upon. Reason becomes strong when attention is focused on what is actionable now. At times, fear will feel convincing because it uses strong emotion as evidence, but intensity is not accuracy. A thought that feels urgent is not necessarily true. A thought that feels threatening is not necessarily real. The mind often produces strongest emotional signals when it is uncertain, not when it is correct. If you confuse emotional intensity with truth, you will consistently misjudge situations. Train yourself to question the urgency created by fear. Ask whether immediate action is truly required or whether the mind is simply attempting to escape discomfort. Many moments that feel urgent are not emergencies. They are interpretations shaped by anxiety. Reason slows them down and restores proportion. You must also observe how fear influences your self-image. It tells you that failure defines you. It tells you that mistakes reduce your worth. It tells you that judgment from others determines your value. If you accept these ideas, you will constantly avoid action that carries any risk of discomfort. But reason understands that mistakes are part of action, not evidence of failure of character. Character is measured by response after error, not by absence of error. When fear appears during important moments, do not argue with it emotionally. Do not try to suppress it with force. Simply recognize it and return to principle. Ask what action aligns with reason regardless of discomfort. Then act accordingly. Courage is not absence of fear. It is decision not to be governed by it. Each evening review where fear influenced your decisions, not to criticize yourself, but to understand patterns. Where did you avoid necessary action? Where did you remain silent when honesty was required? Where did you delay what should have been done immediately? Where did you interpret uncertainty as danger? This awareness gradually reduces fear's influence because it becomes recognized instead of unconscious. Over time, something important begins to change. Fear still appears, but it no longer controls direction. It becomes a signal rather than a command. Reason stands between fear and action. That space becomes the center of your freedom. In that space, you are no longer reacting automatically. You are choosing deliberately. A life governed by fear is a life constantly shrinking inward. A life governed by reason is a life expanding through deliberate action. Fear protects comfort but limits growth. Reason accepts discomfort but builds strength. Fear reacts to imagined loss. Reason responds to actual conditions. Fear avoids difficulty. Reason engages it with clarity. Choose reason first every time fear rises. Not because fear disappears, but because you refuse to let it decide for you. This single discipline transforms your entire inner life. It shifts you from reaction to reflection, from avoidance to action, from confusion to clarity. And in that shift you recover control over yourself, which is the only control that has ever truly belonged to you. Number 8. Reject distraction and return to the present moment. You are not living in the present moment as often as you believe. You are moving through fragments of attention scattered across memory, imagination, notification, and reaction. Your body may be in the current moment, but your mind is constantly pulled elsewhere. This divided attention is the quiet reason your days feel unstable and your focus feels weak. Distraction is not just interruption from the outside. It is a habit of surrendering your mind internally before anything external even touches you. Look carefully at how quickly your awareness leaves the present. A thought appears about something that happened earlier and your mind leaves the task in front of you. A concern about the future rises and your attention abandons the current action. A notification flashes and your judgment dissolves into automatic response. None of this requires force from the outside. Your attention moves willingly because it has not been trained to remain where reason is needed. You are not being pulled away by life. You are drifting away from it. Distraction thrives where judgment is weak. The mind that does not examine what deserves attention treats everything as equally important. Every thought demands response. Every impulse demands engagement. Every external signal demands reaction. In such a state, nothing is truly chosen. You are simply reacting to whatever appears next. This is why focus feels difficult. Not because you lack ability, but because you have not trained distinction between what deserves your mind and what does not. To reject distraction is not to remove external noise. It is to refuse internal cooperation with unnecessary movement of thought. The world will continue to produce stimuli. People will continue to speak. Situations will continue to change. Your task is not to silence the world. Your task is to stop scattering your attention in response to every signal it produces. The disciplined mind filters instead of reacting. Every moment of distraction begins with permission. A thought appears and you allow it to grow without question. An impulse arises and you follow it without hesitation. An external interruption occurs and you abandon your current intention immediately. Over time, these small permissions create a mind that cannot remain stable in one place. It becomes trained in fragmentation. You then call this lack of focus natural, but it is actually habitual. Return to the present moment requires recognition of what is actually under your control right now, not past events that cannot be changed, not future outcomes that have not arrived, not opinions that belong to others, only the present judgment you are forming and the present action you are taking. Everything else is secondary. When attention drifts beyond this boundary, it enters territory where reason cannot operate effectively. Distraction often feels harmless because it offers temporary relief from difficulty. The mind avoids uncomfortable tasks by shifting attention to easier stimulation. It seeks short bursts of pleasure or curiosity to escape effort. But this pattern weakens discipline. Each escape reinforces the idea that discomfort should be avoided rather than faced. Over time, this creates dependence on constant stimulation and inability to remain with sustained effort. A trained mind does not follow every impulse to escape. It recognizes the moment of avoidance and returns deliberately to the task. This return is not emotional, it is rational correction. The mind says attention has drifted and brings it back without judgment. This simple act, repeated consistently, becomes the foundation of mental strength, not through force, but through repeated redirection. You must begin observing how often your attention leaves before you even notice it has left. While reading, you drift into thought. While speaking, you begin thinking about something unrelated. While working, you split attention between task and distraction. This lack of presence reduces the quality of everything you do. Even simple actions become unstable because they are never fully attended to. To return to the present moment is to restore full engagement with what is immediately in front of you. When you are working, only work exists. When you are speaking, only speaking exists. When you are observing, only observation exists. The mind stops dividing itself between competing streams of thought. It becomes unified in action. This unity is what produces clarity. Each morning you must prepare your attention as you would prepare any disciplined tool. Before the day begins, acknowledge that distraction will attempt to pull you away from intention, not because anything is wrong with you, but because the mind naturally drifts when not guided. Set the intention that when you notice distraction, you will return without delay, not after justification, not after delay. Immediately upon recognition. Throughout the day, practice noticing the first moment of drift. This moment is subtle. It appears as slight loss of focus, mild curiosity towards something unrelated, or internal commentary unrelated to current action. Most people miss this moment entirely, but this is where control exists. If you notice it early, you can correct it easily. If you notice it late, you are already absorbed in distraction. Do not treat returning to the present moment as failure. It is training. The mind will drift repeatedly at first. This is expected. What matters is not perfection, but recognition followed by return. Each return strengthens awareness. Each recognition weakens unconscious drifting. Over time, the gap between distraction and correction becomes smaller. You must also examine how emotional reactions contribute to distraction. When anger arises, attention moves away from reason into reaction. When anxiety appears, attention moves into imagined futures. When desire emerges, attention moves toward anticipation instead of present responsibility. These emotional states are forms of internal distraction because they remove you from what is actually happening now. Learning to observe emotion without leaving the present moment is essential for stability. A disciplined mind treats attention as something valuable rather than disposable. It does not give it away lightly to every stimulus. It does not scatter it across multiple concerns at once. It places it deliberately where it is most useful. This selective focus creates depth in thinking and steadiness in action. Without it, everything becomes shallow and fragmented. You should also notice how much of your internal dialogue has nothing to do with the present task. The mind comments, evaluates, judges, remembers, and anticipates constantly. Much of this inner speech is unnecessary. It does not assist action. It only divides attention. Learning to reduce this internal noise is part of returning to presence. Not by forcefully silencing thought, but by refusing to engage every thought that appears. When you feel overwhelmed, return immediately to the physical reality of the moment. Notice what you are doing with your hands. Notice your posture. Notice the task directly in front of you. This anchors attention back into reality rather than imagination. Distraction thrives in abstract thinking. Presence thrives in concrete engagement. At the end of each day, review where your attention was lost. Not to criticize yourself, but to understand patterns. What types of thoughts pull you away most easily? What situations weaken your focus? What emotions lead to fragmentation? Awareness of these patterns allows correction in the future. Without awareness, repetition continues unconsciously. You will begin to notice that most of your stress does not come from what you are doing, but from where your mind is when you are doing it. A divided mind experiences pressure even in simple tasks because part of it is always elsewhere. A present mind experiences clarity even in difficult tasks because it is fully engaged with reality instead of resisting it mentally. Reject distraction by refusing to treat every thought as a command for attention. Return to the present moment by choosing to remain with what is real rather than what is imagined. Each time you do this, you restore order inside your mind. Each time you fail to do this, you reinforce fragmentation. The direction of your life is shaped by this small decision, repeated countless times. Presence is not a special state. It is the result of disciplined attention returning again and again to what is here. Nothing more complex is required, only repeated refusal to abandon the present for unnecessary mental movement. Over time, this practice builds a mind that is steady, clear, and governed by reason instead of distraction. Number 9. Practice virtue and let success follow naturally. You are constantly chasing outcomes while neglecting the only thing that actually belongs to you: your character, your judgment, your choices in each moment. You believe success is something that arrives from external approval, accumulated results, and favorable recognition. But you ignore the condition of the mind producing those pursuits. When the mind is disordered, even success becomes unstable. When the mind is disciplined, even simplicity becomes sufficient. You have been looking in the wrong direction for control. Look closely at how your attention is usually directed. You focus on results before you focus on conduct. You think about outcomes before you examine intention. You measure progress through external comparison rather than internal integrity. This creates a life where anxiety grows alongside ambition. The more you want external success without correcting internal disorder, the more fragile you become, because you are building direction on something you cannot fully control while ignoring what you can fully govern. Virtue is not decoration for life. It is the structure that holds life together. Without it, every achievement becomes unstable because it lacks internal foundation. Virtue means disciplined judgment. It means acting with honesty even when dishonesty is easier. It means choosing fairness when advantage tempts you otherwise. It means maintaining self-control when impulse demands immediate satisfaction. It means remaining steady in thought when emotion tries to dominate. These are not abstract ideals. They are daily decisions shaping who you become. You suffer not because success is absent, but because your pursuit of success is often disconnected from virtue. You chase outcomes while neglecting the quality of mind that produces them. You want recognition without consistent integrity. You want progress without disciplined behavior. You want advantage without restraint. This separation creates internal conflict, because part of you knows that external gain without internal alignment does not produce lasting peace. Every time you compromise your principles for short-term benefit, you weaken the foundation of your own stability. Every time you act dishonestly for advantage, you reinforce dependence on external validation. Every time you prioritize appearance over truth, you train your mind to value perception more than reality. Over time, this creates a life where success feels hollow because it is not supported by self-respect. Practice virtue by returning attention to your actions rather than outcomes. Before every decision, examine whether it aligns with reason or with impulse. Ask whether it strengthens your character or merely serves immediate desire. Ask whether it can be done honestly or only through distortion. This examination is not delay, it is clarity. Without it, action becomes random and reactive. With it, action becomes intentional and disciplined. Each morning, you must set your intention not toward success as defined by external reward, but toward conduct governed by reason. You cannot control how others respond to your work. You cannot control timing of results. You cannot control external recognition. But you can control whether your actions are guided by honesty, discipline, fairness, and self-restraint. These are the only stable foundations of a meaningful life. When you focus on virtue first, your relationship with success changes completely. Success stops being a source of anxiety and becomes a possible outcome rather than a necessary validation. You no longer depend on it for self-worth. You no longer distort your behavior to obtain it. You no longer abandon principles to accelerate it. Instead, you act correctly regardless of outcome, and in doing so, you remove internal conflict from your pursuit. Most people reverse this order. They chase success first and hope virtue will follow. But this creates instability because external achievement does not guarantee internal discipline. You can gain recognition and still remain impulsive. You can acquire wealth and still remain restless. You can achieve status and still remain insecure. Without virtue, success amplifies character flaws instead of correcting them. Observe how often your decisions are influenced by desire for approval. You adjust behavior depending on who is watching. You modify speech to gain acceptance. You avoid honesty to prevent discomfort in others. These patterns slowly disconnect you from integrity. You begin acting not according to what is right, but according to what is socially rewarded. Over time, this creates inner fragmentation because your actions no longer reflect your actual judgment. Virtue restores alignment between thought and action. It demands consistency even when no one is observing. It demands honesty even when dishonesty would produce benefit. It demands restraint even when impulse offers immediate pleasure. This alignment is what produces inner stability. Without it, you become dependent on external validation to feel consistent with yourself. You must also examine how comparison distorts your sense of success. When you measure progress against others, you lose awareness of whether your actions are actually reasonable. You begin chasing relative position instead of internal quality. Someone else's achievement becomes your standard instead of your own disciplined judgment. This shifts attention away from virtue and toward competition that has no moral direction. A rational mind does not measure itself against external comparison. It measures itself against its own principles. Did I act with honesty? Did I remain disciplined? Did I maintain fairness? Did I resist unnecessary impulse? These are the correct measures of progress, not visibility, not applause, not external ranking. A life aligned with virtue can appear ordinary externally, but remain stable internally. A life without virtue can appear successful externally, but remain unstable within. Let success follow naturally by focusing on what produces it indirectly. Disciplined action, clear judgment, consistent effort, and integrity create conditions where meaningful results emerge without distortion. When you stop chasing success as a direct emotional goal, you begin producing it as a byproduct of correct conduct. This removes pressure from outcomes and returns attention to behavior. At times you will feel tempted to abandon virtue when results are delayed. You will think that compromise will accelerate progress. You will believe that small dishonesty will not matter. You will assume that short-term gain justifies ethical flexibility. But every compromise accumulates. Each one weakens trust in your own judgment. Eventually, you stop trusting your own decisions because you know they were shaped by convenience rather than principle. Practice reviewing your actions at the end of each day, not to judge outcomes but to examine conduct. Where did you act according to reason? Where did impulse override discipline? Where did desire replace judgment? Where did fear influence decision? This reflection trains awareness of internal causes rather than external effects. Without this awareness, you will repeatedly misattribute success or failure to factors outside your control. You must also learn to tolerate the possibility that virtue may not immediately produce visible reward. This is where most people abandon discipline. They expect immediate external validation for internal correctness. When it does not appear, they assume their effort is wasted. But virtue is not transactional, it is structural. Its value is not measured in immediate outcomes, but in long-term stability of character. A life guided by virtue becomes independent of external fluctuation. Praise does not inflate it. Criticism does not destabilize it. Success does not corrupt it. Failure does not destroy it. It remains anchored in internal judgment rather than external change. This is what makes it reliable, not because circumstances are controlled, but because response to circumstances is governed. When you begin to live this way, you will notice that success becomes less emotionally necessary. You will still work, you will still strive, you will still pursue improvement, but you will no longer sacrifice inner integrity for external gain. You will no longer feel compelled to distort yourself for approval. You will no longer abandon reason for advantage. Your actions will begin to feel consistent regardless of outcome. This consistency is the beginning of real freedom. Not freedom from responsibility, but freedom from internal contradiction. You are no longer pulled in opposite directions by desire and principle. They are no longer in conflict because desire is now subordinated to reason. You want less that is unnecessary and pursue more that is justified. Let virtue guide your decisions first and allow success to emerge naturally from disciplined conduct. Do not invert this order again. When you prioritize outcomes over character, you create instability. When you prioritize character over outcomes, you create steadiness. One leads to dependence on external approval, the other leads to independence of mind. Over time, this practice reshapes your entire approach to life. You stop asking what will make you appear successful and start asking what will make you act correctly. You stop chasing validation and start building integrity. You stop measuring life by accumulation and start measuring it by quality of judgment. And in that shift, success loses its power to control your inner state. Number 10. Endure the day with courage and clear purpose. The day does not ask whether you feel ready. It only unfolds. Demands appear without permission. Pressure rises without warning. People act without regard for your expectations. Circumstances shift without consulting your comfort. If your inner state depends on everything aligning with preference, you will spend most of your life in resistance. Courage is not the absence of difficulty, it is the decision to remain governed by reason while difficulty is present. You already know how often your day is shaped by reactions rather than purpose. A single comment changes your mood, a delay reshapes your focus, a minor setback alters your energy, an unexpected task interrupts your intention, and suddenly your direction is lost. What appears as a normal day becomes fragmented because attention follows emotion instead of principle. You are not moving through the day with clarity, you are being moved by it. Clear purpose begins when you stop asking how the day will treat you and start asking how you will act within it. The day itself is not under your control. Its events, interruptions, and outcomes do not belong to you. What belongs to you is the manner in which you respond, whether you remain steady or become reactive, whether you act with discipline or surrender to impulse, whether you maintain reason or abandon it under pressure. This is where your authority actually exists. Most suffering during the day does not come from events themselves. It comes from resistance to them. You expect smooth conditions, then interpret reality as unfair when it does not comply. You expect recognition, then feel frustration when it does not appear. You expect control, then experience anxiety when uncertainty arises. These expectations are not reality. They are assumptions you never examined, and every time reality does not match them, your mind reacts as if something has gone wrong. Enduring the day with courage means removing emotional negotiation from reality. You stop bargaining with what is already happening. You stop arguing internally with conditions that cannot be changed. You stop interpreting difficulty as injustice. Instead, you begin to treat every situation as material for disciplined response, not something to resist, but something to meet with clarity. Each morning you must prepare your mind for what is already inevitable. The day will contain frustration. The day will contain interruption. The day will contain moments that do not align with preference. This is not misfortune. This is normal existence. A mind that expects only comfort becomes fragile. A mind that expects difficulty becomes steady. Preparation removes surprise, and without surprise, emotional collapse loses its power. Courage begins at the level of judgment. When something difficult appears, your mind immediately produces interpretation. This is bad, this is unfair, this should not be happening. These judgments feel automatic, but they are not truths. They are reactions shaped by preference. If you accept them without examination, they dictate your emotional state. If you examine them, they lose authority. The situation remains the same, but your response becomes governed by reason instead of reaction. Clear purpose requires constant return to what actually matters. Not every interruption deserves equal weight. Not every thought deserves attention. Not every emotion deserves expression. Most of what disturbs your day is not the event itself, but the mental expansion around it. You turn small issues into large ones by continuously feeding them attention. A disciplined mind restricts this expansion. It returns focus to what is essential and ignores what is unnecessary. You must also recognize how often your courage is weakened by attachment to outcome. You want the day to unfold in a specific way. When it does not, you interpret it as failure, but outcomes are not under your control. Effort is, intention is, judgment is, action is. If your sense of stability depends on external results, you will always remain vulnerable. If it depends on disciplined conduct, you remain steady regardless of results. During the day, practice returning repeatedly to present action, not past evaluation, not future projection, only what is directly required now. Courage does not require seeing the entire path ahead. It requires taking the next rational step without hesitation. When attention expands too far into future uncertainty, fear enters. When attention returns to present duty, clarity returns. You must observe how often emotional discomfort tries to redirect your actions. When something feels difficult, the mind seeks escape. When something feels uncertain, the mind seeks avoidance. When something feels unpleasant, the mind seeks distraction. These impulses are not guidance. They are resistance to discipline. If followed, they create a life shaped by avoidance rather than intention. Endurance is built by refusing immediate obedience to discomfort. When difficulty appears, you do not immediately react. You pause internally and return to principle. What is the correct action regardless of how I feel? What is required according to reason rather than impulse? What aligns with discipline rather than avoidance? This return to principle is what allows action to continue even when emotion resists. You should also examine how often your energy is wasted on things that do not belong to you. The behavior of others, their opinions, their judgments, their reactions, these are not within your control. Yet much of your emotional disturbance comes from them. You interpret their behavior as personal impact, when in reality it is external movement unrelated to your character. When you stop assigning them authority over your inner state, your emotional stability increases. A courageous mind does not wait for favorable conditions before acting. It acts correctly within unfavorable conditions. It does not require motivation to begin what is necessary. It does not require comfort to remain steady. It does not require approval to continue doing what is right. Its foundation is reason, not circumstance. This is what allows it to remain consistent across changing environments. At times during the day you will feel overwhelmed, not because the situation is truly beyond your capacity, but because attention has been scattered across too many impressions at once. In such moments, return immediately to simplicity. What is the next correct action? Not 10 steps ahead. Not every possible outcome, only the immediate requirement. This reduction of scope restores clarity. You must also learn to separate emotional intensity from importance. A situation may feel urgent without being important. A feeling may feel powerful without being accurate. A thought may feel convincing without being true. If you equate intensity with significance, you will constantly misprioritize your actions. Courage requires seeing beyond emotional weight into actual relevance. As the day progresses, monitor how often you drift away from purpose. Distraction, reaction, emotional commentary, and internal argument all pull you away from deliberate action. Each time you notice this drift, you are given an opportunity to return, not through force but through recognition. The act of returning is the discipline itself. Enduring the day also requires acceptance of limitation. You will not execute every intention perfectly. You will not maintain constant clarity without interruption. You will not eliminate all mistakes. Courage is not perfection. It is continuation despite imperfection. The moment you stop acting because conditions are not ideal, you surrender discipline to expectation. At the end of the day, examine your conduct honestly, not outcomes but responses. Where did you act with clarity despite difficulty? Where did emotion override reason? Where did you abandon purpose due to discomfort? Where did you regain control after losing it? This reflection builds awareness of patterns that otherwise remain invisible. Over time, something becomes clear. The day itself is not your opponent, it is neutral. It simply presents conditions. The true struggle exists in your response to those conditions. When response is governed by impulse, the day feels chaotic. When response is governed by reason, the day becomes structured even within uncertainty. To endure the day with courage is to remain faithful to reason regardless of how the day behaves. It is to act according to principle even when emotion resists. It is to maintain clarity even when circumstances shift. It is to continue forward even when comfort is absent. Not because the day becomes easier, but because you become governed by something stronger than reaction. When this discipline becomes habitual, the day no longer defines your inner state. You define it through your response. And in that moment, courage and purpose are no longer ideas you follow. They become the way you live.